Welcome back to the studio. I'm Guru Kathryn. If you're new here, I talk about all kinds of interesting things from your personal development to your spiritual journey and fun tech subjects like blockchain, quantum AI, and crypto. If you have specific things you'd like me to address or specific questions that you want me to go over in these videos and podcasts and things that I do, you can drop me a note at kathryncolleen.com. You can text me directly, or you find me on the socials and ask your question there, and I'll make sure that I address that for you. So today we're going to be talking about the subject of peace, and peace is my main mission on this earth, and it's not an easy one, but there's a process to peace, and we want to talk today about how to create peace on the global stage, in your personal life, and so forth. And it's a process, and it's easy, but it's not free. And that is the part that everybody stumbles on. It's not free. So we'll get into the details of that and what that means for your life, in your relationships, in your work life, and on the global stage, and in negotiations of all kinds. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's start with what peace is, because there's a lot of ways to define this, right? You could have peace of mind. You can have peace meaning non-violence, right? A lack of violence in your life. You could have mental and emotional peace, meaning there's a lack of mental or emotional turmoil or drama. Most people use it as lack of drama. Oh, I just want peace. It really means you're tired of the drama in your life. So all of this drama, whether it be mental, emotional, physical, could be violent, any of that nature. When we say that we want peace, what we're really saying is that we don't want any drama in our life. None of it. None of any of these kinds of drama in our life. And that's a really beautiful goal. And the process to get there is always the same. And it's easy, but it's not free. So let's dive into what that process is. And then we'll talk about how we apply that process to your personal life, or how you would apply that process on the world stage between entities in conflict. So the process looks like this. If there's drama in your world, if there is physical, mental, or emotional turmoil or violence in your world, it means that you are in conflict, typically, with someone else. Now, that someone else might be yourself, might be another person on this planet, might be a government entity or organization, right? It might not be a specific individual, but it might be an organization of some kind that's causing drama in your life. And it could be, obviously, country on country, state on state violence. It can be war and conflict, of which there are 22 happening right now in the world. And so there is you and there is other. And so the process of peace starts by defining exactly what it is that you want, and to have the other define exactly what it is that they want. So you have to know what both sides want. And I don't mean what news outlets say they want, or maybe what you lie to yourself and tell yourself you want. You have to be incredibly truthful with yourself about what you want. And you have to get the honest truth about what the other wants, whether that other is yourself, right? Just a different part of yourself, another person, or an organization or a government. It could even be your boss at work, whoever the other is. What do you want, and what do they want? Truthfully, what do you both want? And that's step one. Now, if both sides are willing to be absolutely truthful about what they want, Then the next step is you have to prioritize this piece enough that you're willing to give something up to get it. So this is the part where peace is not free. Looking at these two lists in front of you, what you want and what they want. And the reason you're in conflict, the reason there is mental or emotional or physical or violent turmoil, is because you cannot both have what you want. You cannot both have 100% of what you want. Because if you could both have 100% of what you want, there wouldn't be a conflict. You would be working together to make sure that each other were having the 100% of everything you want. You wouldn't have a problem. And I did a video before on how to know when to trust someone. Trust and betrayal. And the summary from that one is basically that if you have two parties and they can both have what they want, then they can trust each other and they can work together and they can both get what they want. Easy. When there is conflict, when you do not have peace, is when they cannot both have what they want. And when two parties cannot both have what they want, one will have more power for some reason. It could be military power, it could be social power, it could be political power, it could be financial power. And the one that doesn't have the power will perpetrate the betrayal first. Once the second party perpetrates the betrayal, the first party will then respond with further betrayal. And now this escalates up into conflict and turmoil, and then all the way into violence and war. So that's where it begins. The fact that you cannot both have what you want, 100% of what you want. And therefore betrayal, and therefore hurt egos, and therefore escalation. And here we are. So to be able to back out of all of that and get to a place where you have peace, you have to go back to that foundation of what do you both want. And you have to have both those lists side by side. What does each party want? And then, because you cannot both have what you want, otherwise you wouldn't be in this situation, each party has to give something up. Each party has to agree to not get some portion of what they want. You have to look for that Venn diagram of what can we each have and what are we going to be willing to give up in order to be at peace. And that's where people get stuck, because you're going to have to give up something you didn't want to give up, that you've been in this conflict to try to not give it up, but you're going to have to give up something you didn't want to give up if you want to actually be at peace. And they'll say, but it's not fair. No, it's not fair. It's not fair, but do you want peace or not? So let's apply this to everyday life first, and we'll work our way up from there. So applying this to your everyday life. If you are in a toxic relationship, it might be mentally, emotionally, psychologically, or physically abusive. If you are in even just a relationship that's toxic on the mildest level, just mild, it's annoying, right? Or it's detrimental to you in some way. And it doesn't matter what it is. Now here is the turmoil in your life. Well, every time I hang out with that person, I have this kind of negative experience. Okay. So you know what the answer is. You need to not hang out with that person. You need to limit your contact with that person. Well, but maybe you don't want to give that up for some reason. But you may have to be willing to give that up. Oh, but if I avoid that person, it might mean I have to avoid that location. Or it might mean I have to change jobs. Or some other thing. Or if I leave that relationship, which I know I need to do, it might mean that I have to give up significant money, or I have to leave all my stuff behind and leave with what's in my car. Right? You may have to give up something you really, 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 really don't want to give up. But if you decide that having the peace is worth it, you will give it up. You will pack your car and leave with what's in your car. You will give up the money and have nothing for a while. You will give up the stuff. You will avoid that location. You will avoid that person, because you prioritize that the peace of mind is just so much more important. That the lack of drama, the emotional peace, the mental peace, the physical peace, you just decide that it's more important. So you do it, and you give up the thing you didn't want to give up. And you walk away, but you have peace. And you realize that what you gained is so much better than what you gave up, and that it was so worth it. But you can't see that when you're on the other side. And so people get so willing to give up what it takes for peace that they're willing to detriment themselves and others all day, every day, for years. So let's take a look at what that looks like on the world stage. There are, from everything that I hear, more than 20 different wars and conflicts happening, violent wars and conflicts happening around the world right now. That is an absolute shame. And they say, oh, well, it's necessary. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not necessary. Because I've studied this enough to know how this works. So let's start with, state actors, 2 different countries in conflict. They're in conflict because they cannot both have what they want. So it begins with 2 countries, each stating what they want. And they can't both have what they want. And so it begins a political conflict. And because they can't both have what they want, and because they're not willing to give anything up to sustain peace, then they end up in a military conflict. So we just went from political conflict to a military conflict. And is it fair? No. Is it wrong? Absolutely. Is it immoral? Mm-hmm. Is there any good reason for it? Nope. But because their leaders were so unwilling to give up what is necessary to create peace, or to take the steps that they didn't want to take to create peace, here we are. So once you're in that violent conflict, and people are dying, to get out of it, it has to get bad enough, just like in your personal life, it has to get bad enough that you decide that peace is more important. And how do you know when it's bad enough? When they start to negotiate, when they start to decide to give up something they didn't want to give up. When they go back to those lists of, and we'll just pick on Ukraine and Russia right now, that's just one of the many, nearly 24 violent conflicts happening in the world right now. You go back to that list of, what does Ukraine really want? What does Russia really want? And not what headlines say they want. What do they really want? And that takes a little bit of work, usually by a third party mediator, somebody like me or somebody else. And once you've got those lists, now it's okay. We can't both have what we want. What is peace worth to you? What's it worth? And both sides, not just one side, but both sides have to choose to give up something that they didn't want to give up, to not get something on their list that they wanted to get, right? To have only 60% of what they each wanted, or 80% of what they each wanted, or however much you can, if you can get it, as much for each person or each party as they wanted. But that's what it takes. And it's not hard, I think, but it's not free. It's easy. It's simple. But it's very expensive. And people get so fearful, they get so trapped in their ego that they're not willing to give up what it takes, to do what it takes to create peace. And it takes a very humble leader to create peace. It takes a leader who understands that whatever it is they have to give up is not worth the lives of their people, that the lives of their people are more important. It takes a leader that actually cares about the lives of their citizens and is not willing to sacrifice them. And that's a very humble leader. It's a humble leader. It's a leader that understands what's important. But it's the type of leader we don't have many of in the world today. And that's why we see the conflicts that we have. And that's why we see what we see in the world today. So that is the process of peace. That's it. Understand what both parties want. Each party gives up something they didn't want to give up in the name of peace. And both parties walk away in peace. And is it fair? No. Especially if you're not the one that started the conflict. Is it fair to you? Absolutely not. But that's the choice. You either do what it takes to create peace or you don't have peace. And it's so not fair because somebody could be a bully, and this is always what people say to me. But so-and-so, they're just a bully. I didn't deserve this. No, you didn't deserve that. You didn't. But here you are. So are you going to do what it takes to have peace or not? Right? If somebody is threatening you, there are some actions you can take, but at some point you might have to move yourself somewhere else. You might literally have to pick up and move somewhere else. Is it fair? No. But what are you willing to do to have peace? Mental, emotional, physical peace. And the process is exactly the same between two people as it is between two countries, except that it's the leaders that have to make those decisions, and the citizens don't really seem to have a say. And so that's why you want to make sure that you choose leaders who would choose peace and would not choose to sacrifice their citizens to violent conflict. Those are few and far between right now, but if you find one, let me know. All right. So this is an incredibly important topic, and I think perhaps one of the most important topics that I can address. So if you have other questions about peace, about how to solve conflict in your life or on the world stage, at work, anywhere in between, this is the process, and I'm happy to help. So make sure you send me your questions, thoughts, ideas, whatever you want me to address, so that I can give you ideas, and I will do that. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you share these out, because that's the only way other people are going to find them. If you find this content useful, make sure that it gets shared around. Thanks for joining me, and I see you next time. I wish you peace.